Welcome to the Rise to Intimacy podcast. I'm your host, Valerie McDonald, and for over a decade, I've worked as a sex and couples therapist because intimacy used to feel really overwhelming for me. I felt a lot of pressure to perform, I was disconnected from my body, and I often felt like desire was out of reach for me. But through my own trauma work, I stopped checking out of my body and started feeling connected to it again. I learned what it's like to experience intimacy without fear, without shutting down, and without numbing out. Now I'm on a mission to help you do the same thing. This podcast exists because trauma doesn't get the last word. You can learn how to calm your body, change the story you've been carrying, and rebuild real connection. First with yourself and then with the people you love. Let's begin. Today we're going to talk about why it can feel so hard to have an orgasm with a partner, but so easy to have an orgasm when you're by yourself. So many clients that I work with say something like, I can orgasm just fine on my own, but when I'm with my partner, it either takes forever or it doesn't happen at all. So studies have found that about 58% of women report that orgasm is easier to achieve through masturbation than through partnered sex. And research on men shows that sexual functionality is consistently higher during masturbation than during partnered sex, including for men with erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and delayed ejaculation. Somewhere between 5 and 25% of both men and women report significant anxiety surrounding sex, and that number is probably an underestimate. So this is pretty common. And the reason it happens has very little to do with your body's capability and almost everything to do with what's going on in your mind and your nervous system when someone else is in the sexual space with you. So that's what I'm going to unpack today. I want to help you understand why this happens, what the research says about the reasons for it, and most importantly, what you can do about it. So when you're alone, there's no audience. There's no performance. There's no one watching, no one waiting, and no one whose reaction you need to manage. You can move at your own pace and focus on what feels good, and therefore be present in a way that allows erotic energy to naturally flow. But the moment another person enters the equation, everything changes because your brain shifts gears. You go from being in your body to being in your head. You start monitoring, thinking things like, am I taking too long? Do they think something is wrong with me? Am I going to be able to stay hard? Is she going to think I'm broken if I can't finish? And for women, what if he gets bored? Or what if I look weird? But that internal monitoring has a name, and researchers call it spectatoring. It was first described by really the first ever sex researchers, Dr. Masters and Virginia Johnson, back in 1970. And decades of research since then have confirmed that it's one of the primary mechanisms that disrupts sexual response. So what's going on physiologically is that your sexual response, meaning erection, lubrication, arousal, orgasm, and ejaculation, all of that is controlled by your autonomic nervous system. But these are not voluntary responses. You cannot will yourself into an orgasm the way you can will yourself to go to work or to do many other things. Arousal and orgasm require a specific nervous system state. They require your parasympathetic nervous system to be dominant or to be the one in control. And that's your rest and digest system. That's the system that says, I'm safe and I can relax. When anxiety shows up, your sympathetic nervous system activates, and that's your fight or flight system. So stress hormones like cortisol flood your body. And research has shown that elevated cortisol is associated with diminished erectile response in men and greater self-reported worry for women during sex. For women, sympathetic activation can also suppress lubrication, reduce sensitivity to touch, and make it harder to notice the erotic cues that build toward orgasm. So your body is literally working against itself because the part of you that wants to orgasm needs to feel calm inside your body. But unfortunately, the part of you that's anxious about whether you're going to orgasm is sending danger signals. And the danger signals win every time, y'all, because your brain prioritizes survival over pleasure. This is why you can orgasm alone and not with a partner. It's not a mystery, it's just neuroscience. So let's talk about how this can become a cycle. Let's say you're with your partner and you're having sex and it's going well. You're feeling aroused, things are building, and then a thought pops in. What if I don't orgasm? Or it's taking too long. They're probably getting tired. Or for men, I'm starting to lose my erection. Those thoughts pull you out of your body and into your head, and you go from feeling sensation to analyzing sensation. And the moment you start analyzing, the erotic cues that were building your arousal get drowned out by the chatter in your head. And then your arousal decreases. Now the thing you are worried about is actually happening. And your brain goes, see, I told you, this is what always happens. And then the next time you're in a sexual situation, your brain remembers. Before anything has even started, you're already anticipating failure. Researchers call this anticipatory anxiety, and unfortunately, it's self fulfilling. You're so busy bracing for the next thing not to work that you've already created the conditions for it not to work. I once worked with a male client in his 40s who came to me after about a year of struggling to maintain erections during sex with his wife. He could get aroused on his own, had no issues with morning erections, and no medical problems. But the moment he was with her, his mind would start racing. And the more it happened, the more he lived in fear of initiating sex. He started to avoid it entirely. And then his wife felt rejected, and he felt ashamed. And by the time they came in, they hadn't been intimate in months. But when we dug deeper, the pattern had started with one experience where he lost his erection. Just one. And from that single moment, his brain built an entire story about what it meant about him as a man, as a partner, and as a lover. That story then became the lens through which he approached every sexual encounter after that. And the same thing happens for women. I worked with a woman in her 30s who had never orgasmed with a partner. She could orgasm reliably through masturbation, though. But with a partner, she would get close and then her mind would start spiraling. She'd think about how long it was taking, whether her partner was getting impatient, whether something was actually wrong with her body. She described it as being right on the edge and then noticing her brain putting up a wall towards pleasure. She told me she started faking orgasms early in her sex life because she felt so much shame about not being able to orgasm. And that pattern of faking reinforced the belief that partnered orgasm wasn't possible for her. By the time she came to see me, she had years of evidence that her body didn't work with another person in the room. But because she could orgasm just fine when alone, I knew the problem wasn't her body. It was her mind getting in the way. So let me discuss the most common barriers to achieving orgasm in these situations. The first one is super common and it's performance pressure. It's the biggest one I see in my practice. The belief that sex is something you have to do well, or that there's a right way and a wrong way, and that your partner is evaluating your performance. Tied into this can also be pressure to please your partner, which can cause us to sacrifice some consent in order to show up as a quote unquote good partner. But research shows that individuals with high self efficacy, meaning the belief in your own ability to handle a situation, tend to visualize success even when facing obstacles, while people with low self efficacy dwell on negatives and envision failure. When it comes to sex, low self efficacy means you're mentally rehearsing the worst case scenario while trying to be present for pleasure. But those two things cannot coexist. The next barrier is body image concerns. So when you're worried about how your body looks, you're engaged in spectatoring. You're watching yourself from the outside instead of feeling what's happening on the inside. And women who reported higher levels of distraction during sex, specifically fear of not satisfying their partner, had less consistent orgasms and were more likely to fake them. Another barrier for men is fear of losing an erection or taking too long. The fear of erectile difficulty creates the very sympathetic activation that causes erectile difficulty. Studies show that as men progress through the sexual response cycle, nervous system control normally shifts from parasympathetic to sympathetic dominance. But in men with performance anxiety, that shift happens too quickly or too erratically, resulting in either premature ejaculation or loss of erection. The fear creates the dysfunction, which then creates more fear. For women, the fear of taking too long to orgasm is incredibly common. Studies have found that women reach orgasm in an average of about 8 minutes during masturbation and about 14 minutes during partnered sex. And that difference is significant. And when a woman is aware of it, she can start pressuring herself to speed up, which creates the exact anxiety that slows things down and can ultimately cause an inability to orgasm at all. Shame and embarrassment are often another barrier to achieving orgasm with a partner. If you've had experiences where orgasm didn't happen with a partner, you may carry shame about that. You might worry that your body is broken or that your inability to orgasm means the relationship is lacking. That shame becomes another layer of anxiety that your nervous system has to process during sex, taking up space that would otherwise be available for pleasure. And now another barrier is that some people worry that if they can't orgasm with their partner, the relationship itself is at risk. That fear adds stakes to every sexual encounter, and sex stops being about connection and pleasure and starts being about proving something. And when sex becomes a test, your body tightens up. It protects itself. And then finally, trauma. Trauma is a very common barrier to orgasm during partner sex. But it doesn't always have to just mean sexual trauma. Many individuals with a trauma history dissociate when triggered, meaning their body is present, but the brain is temporarily offline. And when this happens, your brain can't register sensations in the body, making it extremely difficult or sometimes impossible to have an orgasm. So, if anxiety and spectatoring and nervous system dysregulation are part of the problem, what can we do about it? The good news is that there are well researched, effective strategies that can help, and they work for both men and women. So, I'm going to discuss 5 strategies you can use today if you're struggling with attaining orgasms during partner sex. The first strategy is directed masturbation as a starting point. So, I know this might sound counterintuitive because if you can already orgasm alone, why would more solo practice help? But here's why. Directed masturbation is the most evidence supported treatment for learning to orgasm, particularly for women who have never experienced an orgasm with a partner. Research shows that 60 to 90% of women who are unable to orgasm were able to achieve an orgasm through structured and directed masturbation practice. But this isn't just about doing more of what you're already doing. It's about doing it with intention and awareness. So the idea is to slow down and pay attention. Notice what sensations build arousal. Notice what kind of touch, pressure, speed, and rhythm your body responds to. Build a detailed map of your own arousal process, because here's what research found. Women who aligned what they did during masturbation with what happened during partner sex were significantly more likely to orgasm during the partner sex. And they also reported greater pleasure when they did so. So that's great. But most people will have a disconnect here because what you do alone and what happens with a partner are very different experiences. And the way to bridge that gap is through awareness and communication. Learn what works for you through this self-exploration, and then bring that knowledge to your partner, either by guiding your partner or incorporating the same types of stimulation or communicating your needs more specifically. For men, the same principle applies. Research has found that understanding a man's response during masturbation may be important to improving his sexual response during partnered sex. So, if you know what your body needs to stay aroused and reach orgasm without anxiety, you now have a blueprint to rely on during partnered sex. Another strategy is mindfulness. Mindfulness is one of the most researched based interventions for sexual dysfunction. A study of mindfulness based cognitive therapies found that they are effective in improving sexual function in women, including arousal, desire, satisfaction, and orgasm, while also reducing sexual distress and depression. Researchers also noted that the ability to not identify with or overly engage with negative thoughts during sex, and also to not engage with automatic emotions, directly improved orgasmic capacity. So, what does mindfulness during sex actually look like in practice? It means noticing when your mind drifts to a worry or a judgment and gently bringing your attention back to the sensations happening in your body. Think about what touch feels like in the moment. What is the temperature? What type of pressure are you experiencing? It means treating anxious thoughts the way you would during meditation. You notice them, don't fight them, don't follow them, and definitely do not judge them. Just let them pass. And then you come back to your body. But this is a skill that takes a lot of practice and patience. But it gets easier over time because you're building new neural pathways. You're training your brain to stay present during sex instead of defaulting to the old monitoring and analyzing pattern. And of course, one of our strategies is going to be my favorite, nervous system regulation. Again, if your nervous system is in a sympathetic, which is the fight or flight state, orgasm becomes physiologically difficult because your body is prioritizing survival, not pleasure. So, learning to downregulate your nervous system before and during sex is essential. This can look like slow, deep breathing before a sexual encounter. It can also look like progressive muscle relaxation, which is simply a practice of going through all the different parts in your body, tensing them up very tightly till you feel like you can't tense them up anymore, and then releasing them. And that releases a lot of anxious, nervous, and negative energy stored in your body. It can also look like spending 5 or 10 minutes with your partner doing something calming before moving into sexual touch, like lying together, breathing together, or maybe even a slow, non sexual massage. The goal here is to send your nervous system the signal that you're safe, because safety is the prerequisite for sexual arousal. Your body will not orgasm if it believes there's a threat, and performance anxiety registers as a threat in your brain. So, one thing I teach my clients is to notice where anxiety lives in their bodies. This could be places like your head, stomach, or throat. When you can identify where anxiety lives in your body, you can address it directly and give your body permission to relax. Another strategy is very specific to the realm of sex therapy and was also developed by Dr. Masters and Virginia Johnson, and it's called Sensate Focus. So, Sensate Focus was developed to address performance anxiety and sexual dysfunction. It's a structured series of touching exercises that couples do together, and the rules are clear. There's no performance goals, no pressure to become aroused, and no orgasm as the targeted outcome. That is the most important part during the Sensate Focus process. Sensate Focus is effective for treating a wide range of sexual difficulties, including difficulty with orgasm, problems with arousal, and erectile dysfunction for men. The reason Sensate Focus works is that it removes the exact variables that create performance anxiety. When orgasm is off the table, your brain has nothing to worry about. There's no test to pass, there's no clock running, you're free to actually feel what's happening in your body in the moment. These exercises start with non-sexual touch. You take turns touching and being touched, with the exception of certain areas on the body. And then the person being touched focuses on sensation. And that's it. Over time, the exercises gradually reintroduce more intimate touch, and then genital contact, and eventually intercourse. But at every stage, the focus remains on sensation, not outcome. And what I love about Sensate Focus is that it retrains the brain. It builds new associations between partnered touch and safety. It teaches your nervous system that you can be intimate with another person without the pressure that has been hijacking your arousal. And over time, those new associations become your default. And now the last strategy is to lean into your desire, attraction, and connection with your partner. So when it comes to sex, there are multiple things that will inhibit our desire and multiple things that can provoke our desire. Things that inhibit our desire are some of these things we've already discussed: anxiety, not feeling like you're in a great relationship, feeling pressure, and things that might provoke desire are other things that will build your arousal, your attraction to your partner, or maybe your emotional connection to them. But most of the time, when people are struggling with orgasm during partnered sex, they're very focused on removing the inhibitors, and they forget to actively cultivate the things that excite or ignite their desire. So think of things like what turns you on about your partner. What do you find attractive about them? What emotional connection do you feel when you're close to them? Bringing those thoughts and feelings into your conscious awareness during sex is a form of cognitive engagement that feeds arousal rather than starving it. So if you've been stuck in the anxiety loop for a while, you may have lost touch with why you want to be sexual with your partner. But part of the healing process is reconnecting with desire, not as pressure to perform, but as genuine wanting. So if you're experiencing difficulty with our orgasm during partner sex, this doesn't mean something is wrong with you. Think of this challenge as giving you vital information you can use to cultivate pleasure with your partner. It's your body telling you exactly what it needs to feel safe enough to let go and calmly enjoy the experience. And the strategies I shared today are not quick fixes. They're practices. Mindfulness takes repetition. Sensate Focus takes patience. Directed masturbation takes intention and willingness to communicate what you learn. Nervous system regulation takes daily attention. It is not something you just do once and forget about. And in my clinical experience, the couples and individuals who commit to this process see real meaningful change. And not only with experiencing pleasure, but also with the connection they have with their partner. So if you're ready to start that work, I'd love to help you. Head over to risetointimacy.com and book a complimentary consultation with me today. We'll talk about where you are, what's getting in the way, and how to move forward. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please head over to your favorite podcast platform and hit subscribe. It really helps other people find this podcast and hopefully gain some helpful information about their sex lives. Thanks for listening to the Rise to Intimacy podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, know that healing is possible and you don't have to do it alone. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a rating and review for us at ratethispodcast.com/rise. It really helps others find us, and I'm so grateful for all your support. You can learn more about my coaching packages for individuals and couples at risetointimacy.com. And remember, sex therapy isn't for people who are broken. It's for people brave enough to look beneath the surface.